as far as baseball specialization versus the multi-sport athlete. And the reason why I bring this up too is in this time, right, we're dealing with COVID. In New Jersey, we lost our spring season, so no kids really played spring high school baseball, although club did pick up in the summer, and I know fall baseball is picking up. So in a weird way, these kids were forced into specialization up here. So obviously I want to know your thoughts on baseball specialization, but also how it's kind of dealing with, these times as well.
Yeah. I mean, certainly I'm pretty adamantly opposed to specialization for any athlete, but I think baseball is a particularly concerning case because throwing a baseball is the single fastest motion recorded in sports, right? It's 7,000 degrees per second of shoulder internal rotation. So that's a pretty crazy stimulus. And we certainly see, particular adaptations that take place in the throwing shoulder, right? We see, humeral retroversion. So it's effectively a warping of the growth plate that allows you to have more external rotation in your throwing shoulder. We see valgus carrying angles at the elbow where, certainly that valgus stress can effectively lead to a different resting posture. You just see all these things that, are normal findings in throwers that speak to just how stressful the activity is. But what's probably even more interesting about it is, this is a sport that demands, you do the same thing over and over and over again. And the better you do that, the better you are, right? So if you're a pitcher, you want the hitter to appreciate that your fastball, your slider, your changeup, everything looks exactly the same coming out, and then they all just go in different directions. So, we chase this unyielding specificity in the sport, right? Same thing kind of goes with hitting. Obviously, there's adjustability. But, you run the bases, you always run fast and turn left, like over and over again, we do the same things in this sport. And so that's why I think it's so important to have a contrast, right? And whether that's playing multiple sports, whether that's, actually going out and using strength conditioning as that stimulus to give you this, rich proprioceptive environments where you're training in more planes of motion, where you're kind of undoing some of those asymmetries that take place. I think it's critically important. And that's true of all of them. But, the thing we don't appreciate is you can look at the ACL research in soccer, right? And you can look at ankle sprains in basketball, these things. None of them even come close to what we're dealing with in arm injuries in baseball, right? 57% of pitchers have some form of shoulder issue every season. Right? That's over half. Then you throw in elbows, you throw in necks, toss in a few blisters and nail problems. And before you know it, like literally 100% of players have some issue. So what we're always doing is we're effectively triaging baseball players. We're realizing this is a very unnatural act. It's very stressful, particularly when done at high volumes, at high frequencies, and at crazy high velocities. So we're always going to be managing, that are they above or below the threshold? And, you don't want to be there when you're 14. You know what I mean? It's one thing when you're 24 and you're getting paid a lot of money to do this. But it's a markedly different scenario when we're dealing with, developing kids who are skeletally immature, who are encountering some of these stressors. And that's what we're seeing in baseball now. So this is, kind of going off on a different road here, but what we're seeing is a lot of elbow injuries in professional baseball. But more specifically, we're actually seeing a lot more in minor league baseball than we are in the big leagues. So we're seeing it in younger players, whereas the injuries seem to be leveling off or even slightly decreasing in big leaguers, right? Shoulder injuries are actually lower than they've been in a long time, but elbow injuries have kind of stayed high, but it's particularly problematic in the minor league side. And if you talk to some of these surgeons who are doing the repairs, what they're finding is when they go in and they do a Tommy John surgery on a 23-year-old minor leaguer, they're recognizing that ligament actually has previous areas of calcification. So it's not like happenstance just happened. He threw a 98 mile an hour fastball and it went on him at age 23. What actually probably happened was there were a lot of low-grade injuries at age 13, 14, 15, 16, where that kid went out and threw 120 pitches or, pitched back-to-back days or, tried to throw a curveball and in reality just made it into a terrible slider, something like that. And they're developing these weaknesses on the ligament that eventually when the athlete gets bigger, stronger, more mechanically efficient, and is throwing harder, those forces just exceed what that ligament can tolerate. So that's one more reason why protecting guys a little bit more carefully at the younger ages is going to save the game, in a lot of ways, right? It's going to, obviously keep people engaged because it's a big deal to miss a year of participation in the teenage years, but it's also concerning when, those same athletes are broken before they can get to the highest level to really show what they're capable of doing.